You've been taught to fear your lust, to bury it, numb it, silence it, because they told you it's sinful, dangerous, unholy. But what if they lied? What if lust was never meant to be your shame, but your doorway to the divine? Imagine this. Your heart is pounding, your breath shallow, your skin alive with sensation. In that primal moment, not just of desire, but surrender, you feel something else rising. Not just arousal. Awareness. You're not just a body anymore. You're pure presence. Time dissolves. Thought fades. You become infinite. Welcome to Erotic Mysticism. This is the path they never taught you. The sacred art of using lust, not for pleasure alone, but for awakening. You're about to walk a path few dare to take. But if you stay with me, you'll never see your body, or your soul, the same way again. You were told to separate heaven and flesh, as if your soul could only rise once your body was denied. But here's the truth they buried beneath centuries of shame. Your lust is not the enemy. It's the key to God. You've felt it, haven't you? That moment when desire erupts like a fire inside your chest. Not just below the belt, but deep in your gut, in your breath. It shakes your identity. It cracks something in you wide open. And for a fleeting second, you disappear. Not in sin, but in sacred stillness. You're not thinking. You're not worrying. You're not controlling. You are being. Pure, electric being. What if I told you that moment is a portal? That behind your lust is a current. A current that can carry you into altered states of consciousness. Deeper than meditation. Wilder than psychedelics. But only if you stop running from it. You've spent your whole life suppressing your erotic energy. Afraid of its intensity. Ashamed of your fantasies. But shame is not purity. And repression is not discipline. In fact, the more you silence your lust, the more you disconnect from your power. Because this energy, raw, primal, sensual, is not just sexual. It's spiritual. It's the same force the mystics called Eros. The same serpent the ancients saw coiled at the base of your spine. The same Kundalini energy that, once awakened, rises upward. Piercing your illusions, burning your ego, electrifying your awareness. Lust is not unholy. Lust is the spark of creation. And when you learn to channel it, ride it, worship it, you don't just become more sexual. You become more alive. Your senses sharpen. Your breath deepens. Your heart opens. Because this is not about sex alone. This is about the awakening of consciousness through the erotic. You are not a sinner for feeling deeply. You are not broken for craving intensity. You are not impure for aching to merge with something beyond yourself. You are a mystic in disguise. A priest of pleasure. A disciple of the divine force that moves through skin, breath, and soul. And if you're brave enough to walk through this fire, to feel fully, to burn brightly, to surrender your control, you won't just orgasm. You'll transcend. So breathe deep. Because the deeper we go, the more the veil begins to lift. And what lies on the other side is not lust. It's liberation. Close your eyes. Imagine your most intense desire. That one fantasy you've never told anyone. That moment where your body trembled, your thoughts vanished. And all that existed was the heat between your ribs and the ache behind your eyes. That wasn't just lust. That was the beginning of something ancient. Something sacred. Something forbidden. You were never meant to kill your desire. You were meant to transmute it. Because beneath the hunger for skin, for touch, for climax, lies a hunger even deeper. A hunger for union. For wholeness. For the divine. Lust is not just the desire to have someone. It's the soul's cry to merge. To dissolve the boundaries of self and other. And taste infinity. You see, lust is not a mistake. It is encoded into the architecture of your being. A bridge between matter and spirit. It is the flame that reminds you, you are more than flesh. And paradoxically, it's through the flesh that you return to your essence. When you are fully immersed in desire, there comes a moment, quiet, electric, where thought ceases, where identity slips, where ego collapses. In that space, you touch the edge of the infinite. You are no longer you. You are presence. You are breath. You are vibration. That is an altered state of consciousness. And you didn't get there by resisting desire. You got there by surrendering to it. By breathing into it. By becoming one with it, not as a slave, but as a sacred rider of the current. Mystics of every tradition have known this. But they rarely called it by its name. Because to admit that God could be found through lust was too dangerous, too wild, too free, too uncontainable. But in secret they practiced. They fasted not just from food, but from ejaculation. Not to punish the body, but to amplify its power. They meditated on the ache in their loins, until it became a golden serpent rising up their spine, until ecstasy turned inward, until orgasm became union with the cosmos. You don't need a monastery to find God. Sometimes, all you need is a room, a breath, and the courage to sit with your own desire. Let your lust teach you. Don't rush it. Don't waste it. Don't numb it with porn or quick relief. Sit in it like fire. Let it burn away the false self. Let it show you how much of your soul has been hidden beneath shame. Lust is the truth you've never said out loud. The memory your body still holds in the dark. The cry for touch that is really a cry for God. It is not the enemy of enlightenment. It is its secret initiator. Because when you stop treating lust as a curse, you realize it's a compass, pointing you not outward, but inward, toward your own aliveness, toward your forgotten magic, toward the source that made you. In altered states, time bends. You don't remember God. You become God. Not in arrogance, but in union. You dissolve in love. You melt into the one. You become the flame, and the breath, and the sky. So yes, lust can destroy you, if you misuse it. But if you revere it, it will awaken you, not to addiction, but to your divine nature. This is not about pleasure alone. It is about presence. It is about devotion. It is about reclaiming the sacred language of your own flesh. You are not here to suppress your desire. You are here to make it holy. And that begins when you stop chasing climax and start listening to the energy beneath it. Look at your body, not with judgment, not with shame, but with reverence. This is your temple. Every inch of skin, every pulse, every tremble of breath is part of the sacred architecture that houses your soul. And yet, how often have you cursed this temple? Starved it, punished it, hidden it. You were taught that the body is sinful, that desire is dirty, that your longing disqualifies you from divinity. But that is the greatest heresy of all, because the body was never your prison. It is your portal. The saints fasted to feel God. But the mystics? They felt God in the taste of fruit, in the kiss, in the way the thighs pressed into the earth during prayer. You were not created to bypass your body to find the divine. You were created to descend into it, to feel the divine through the tingling of your skin, the quickening of your pulse, the rising heat that signals the approach of something holy. What if your arousal was a prayer? What if your lust was a song of devotion? Not toward another person, but toward the divine lover within you? Your body remembers. It holds stories older than your thoughts, desires deeper than your name, wounds you've never spoken aloud. But it also holds a spark, that primordial erotic current that has never stopped pulsing since the moment of your creation. Your body is not a burden. It is the living scripture of your soul. And your lust? That rising flame? It is incense. It is what burns beneath the surface when you are closest to the divine. Not in dogma, not in discipline, but in direct experience. When your breath deepens during pleasure, that's sacred. When your body arches in surrender, that's sacred. When your moan is half cry, half prayer, that's sacred. Not because you are worshipping sex, but because you are worshipping through it. Because you're no longer divided, no longer split between holy and human. You are whole. Tantra knew this. The Gnostics knew this. Even early Christian mystics whispered of it. But only in metaphors. Because to say it directly would be dangerous. That God can be found not by fleeing the flesh, but by entering it with sacred awareness. When you treat the body like a temple, you don't rush to pleasure. You savor it. You honor the slow unfolding. You feel every spark rise from your toes to your crown, as if awakening the chakras with fire and breath. Lust becomes more than arousal. It becomes alchemy. You begin to feel your energy circulate, not just downward toward release, but upward toward radiance. You begin to sense the divine in your spine, in your heart, in the back of your neck, in the space between your eyebrows. You begin to glow, not from sin, but from sanctity, because you are no longer separating your pleasure from your soul. You are uniting them. This is erotic mysticism, not the indulgence of the undisciplined, but the sacred art of awakening God through the body. And it doesn't require a partner. You can enter this temple alone, through breath work, through sensual movement, through inner alchemy, through conscious self-touch that feels less like gratification, and more like communion. You are the priest. You are the altar. You are the flame. And your lust is the sacred smoke that rises toward the stars. Let no one shame you again. You were never meant to hide your flame. You were meant to burn. There is a place inside you, dark, ancient, and locked. A place you rarely go, because to enter it would mean facing the one thing you were told to avoid. Your unspoken desires. Not the desires you confess. Not the ones that fit neatly in fantasies or under dimmed lights. But the forbidden ones. The ones you silence. The ones you fear. The ones that live in the basement of your being, whispering still. These are your shadows. And in each shadow lives a piece of your power. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And what greater darkness lives within you than the hunger you've never dared to name? The hunger to dominate. The hunger to surrender. The hunger to feel completely devoured. Or to devour another without guilt. The hunger to lose control. The hunger to worship skin like scripture. The hunger to become animal and divine at once. You were taught that these desires are dangerous. But what if they're not evil? What if they're encrypted codes? Symbols of your unexpressed soul? What if beneath every taboo craving lies a piece of your unlived truth? You've spent your whole life trying to be good, trying to be holy, clean, respectable, moral. But you were never born to be tame. You were born to be whole. And wholeness requires the descent. Erotic mysticism is not a path of purity. It is a path of integration, where you face the fantasies you buried, where you meet the parts of you that wanted to be choked, or worshipped, or ravished. Not because you're perverse, but because your psyche is layered, symbolic, and alive. Your lust is the language of your unconscious, and your shadow is its poet. When you repress your desire, it doesn't die. It festers. It becomes shame. It becomes addiction. It becomes projection. It becomes violence. But when you face it, when you bring light to it, it transforms. What once haunted you, now guides you. That urge to submit? Maybe it's your soul's cry to surrender to the divine. That craving to dominate? Maybe it's your inner self trying to reclaim its lost power. That obsession with fantasy? Maybe it's your creative force trying to express itself in ways the world would never allow. You are not sick for craving intensity. You are not broken for aching to feel more. You are simply human. An erotic energy is your soul trying to be felt in the language of the body. The path of erotic mysticism demands honesty. Not performance. Not moral perfection. But raw, radical honesty. You must go into the cave. You must sit in the fire of your own lust. You must ask the questions others are too afraid to whisper. Why do I crave this? What am I running from? Who would I be if I stopped pretending? And when you stay long enough in that space, when you look directly into the eyes of your own erotic shadow, you don't find evil. You find truth. You find the child who was never allowed to be curious. The teenager who felt aroused and ashamed. The adult who's still afraid to be seen in their full power. You find the sacred animal. The wise serpent. The divine erotic self that has waited patiently in silence for your permission to come home. This is not indulgence. This is integration. This is resurrection. Because when you stop rejecting your erotic shadow, you stop living as a fragmented soul. You begin to reclaim your magic. You begin to walk with power. Not as someone hiding, but as someone fully here, present, rooted, alive. The fire no longer consumes you. It becomes your light. You think orgasm is the end, a climax, a release, a reward. But what if it was only the beginning? What if the waves of pleasure you feel during climax are not just physiological surges, but the language of altered consciousness trying to speak through your body? You've been trained to treat orgasm like a conclusion, but the mystic treats it like a portal, a sacred doorway into ego dissolution, energetic awakening, time distortion, and divine communion. Let's get honest. Think back to a moment of intense pleasure, the kind that silenced everything else. No thoughts, no worries, no self-consciousness. Just breath, vibration, sensation, presence. In that moment, weren't you free? Weren't you untethered from the heaviness of your daily identity? That wasn't just horny chemistry. That was ecstasy. Not cheap pleasure, but the loss of boundaries between you and God. The word ecstasy comes from the Greek ekstasis. To stand outside oneself. To step beyond ego. To become the space where heaven meets earth. In altered states, your brain shifts from beta waves to theta. You drop into trance. Time warps. The body tingles. The mind quiets. And you, yes you, merge with something infinite. The mystics of Sufism, Tantra, Gnostic Christianity, Kabbalah, all knew the secret. That erotic energy, when consciously cultivated, creates an inner storm powerful enough to collapse the self. Not in a destructive way, but in the most holy way. The way a star collapses to become light. The way a drop disappears into the ocean. You are no longer the one touching or being touched. You become the touch itself. No longer the body. You become the pulse of life moving through all things. You become awareness. Dissolved in beauty. Cracked open by pleasure. Shattered by presence. And what pours out of you is not just orgasm. It is surrender. And in that surrender, healing begins. Wounds rise to the surface. Tears you didn't know you were holding stream down your cheeks. Old stories lose their grip. You stop being the one who was abandoned, betrayed, rejected, and become the one who has always been held by something timeless, tender, and unnameable. That is the alchemy of ecstasy. That is erotic mysticism. But here's the key. This doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen through fast, friction-based release. It happens through consciousness, through intention, through presence. You must learn to ride the wave of arousal. Not just for climax, but for awakening. That means breathing deeper instead of rushing faster. That means slowing down when you want to speed up. That means circulating the energy upward. From root to heart, from heart to crown. The body becomes a vessel. And the orgasm becomes not an endpoint, but a transformation. Some call it energy orgasm. Others call it spiritual merging. But the truth is, it is you. Meeting yourself. Your soul. Your source. And this can happen alone. In meditation. In tantric breathwork. In conscious self-pleasure. In dance, in stillness, in sacred union with another. When done right, sex becomes sacrament. Pleasure becomes prayer. And climax becomes a death. That gives birth to a new you. You are not meant to stay the same after ecstasy. You are meant to emerge reborn. Burned clean by the fire of sensation. Emptied out to be filled again. With light. With power. With divine knowing. This is the erotic rapture. The lightning strike of God hidden inside your desire. And the moment you stop chasing pleasure as escape, and start meeting it as an initiation, you awaken. You think you're strange for feeling God in your body, for trembling during arousal and calling it sacred, for weeping after climax and calling it prayer. But you're not strange. You're part of a forgotten lineage, the path of sacred lovers, erotic saints, and divine rebels, who found heaven not through denial, but through desire. They whispered their truths in metaphors, hid their practices behind veils of poetry, because if they spoke too plainly, they would have been burned, exiled, or erased. But still, they left clues. Echoes in scripture, symbols in stained glass, verses in ancient manuscripts. And if you listen closely, you'll hear their voices in your bones. Rumi, the Sufi flame. The great Persian mystic Rumi didn't just write of God. He wrote of longing, of ache, of drunkenness on divine beauty. I want to see you. Know your voice. Recognize you when you first come round the corner. Sense your scent when I come into a room you've just left. I want to know the joy of how you whisper, more deeply than words. Was Rumi speaking of a human lover? Or of God wearing flesh? The answer is both. To him, eros and spirit were never separate. Lust was longing. Longing was love. Love was God. Rumi danced. He twirled. He let the fire of desire spin him into altered states, where the soul and the beloved became one. Saint Teresa of Avila, the divine ecstasy. She was a 16th century Christian nun. She lived in cloisters, in silence, in prayer. And yet, her most famous moment? A vision of an angel piercing her heart, with a golden spear of divine love. Her body writhing, moaning, overcome with the bliss of God's touch. She wrote, "The pain was so intense, yet so delightful that I could not wish it to cease. The soul is satisfied now with nothing less than God." The image of her ecstasy was immortalized in marble. A saint in orgasm, frozen in holy rapture. And still, they try to tell you that erotic energy has no place in heaven? Kabir, the erotic weaver of God. He was a 15th century Indian mystic, a poet saint who rejected dogma, and sang of merging with the divine as one would a lover. The moment I heard my first love story, I began looking for you, not knowing how blind that was. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere. They're in each other all along. His verses drip with longing, not for a body, but for the infinite through the body. Kabir saw the beloved in every breath. He saw orgasm as the soul's release into God. He didn't fear desire. He wove it into the sacred. And the tantrikas, the forgotten masters, before modern sex became productized, before religion became repression, there were the tantric mystics of India and Tibet. They didn't flee desire. They wrote it. They sat naked beneath the stars, breathing life up their spines, merging with lovers in sacred ritual, not for pleasure alone, but for the unfolding of consciousness. To them, orgasm was awakening. Lust was energy. The body was divine technology. And desire, when honored, became the serpent rope that led back to the Divine Mother. They spoke of yoni and lingam not as pornographic terms, but as sacred symbols of the cosmos in union, of Shiva and Shakti in cosmic dance, of death and rebirth, of energy cycling, spiraling, rising. And you are the inheritor of that forgotten truth. You are not just someone with cravings. You are a seeker, a mystic, a disciple of the sacred heat that pulses beneath all life. The world told you to fear lust, but the mystics knew. Lust is longing. Longing is love. Love is the light of God wearing skin. What happens when you don't spend your lust, but store it? What happens when you don't run from arousal, but sit inside it like a temple of fire? What happens when you let your body burn, and do not extinguish the flame? This is the path of erotic fasting. Not celibacy in the name of denial, but sacred restraint in the name of power. Because when you stop chasing orgasm, and start containing the charge, you create pressure, inner heat, sacred tension. And pressure is what gives rise to transformation. You see, every time you resist the unconscious urge to release, you are not repressing. You are refining. You are distilling your energy from crude instinct into radiant conscious force. Erotic fasting is not about suppression. It is about sublimation. You become the alchemist, and lust becomes your gold. This is why monks, mystics, and warriors across cultures practice brahmacharya, retention, fasting, and energetic celibacy, not to escape the body, but to charge it with divine current. They knew something you're just beginning to remember. That desire, when untapped, becomes light. That sexual energy, when redirected, becomes creativity, vision, magnetism, and intuition. But you must learn to circulate it. Here's how. When arousal arises, do not fight it. Breathe into it. Slow your breath. Anchor your awareness in your spine. Visualize the energy rising. From root to sacral, from sacral to solar, from solar to heart. From heart to throat, from throat to third eye, and finally, from third eye to crown. This is the microcosmic orbit, an ancient Taoist practice. A way of lifting the serpent energy from the genitals to the mind. From instinct to enlightenment. It's not fantasy. It's not metaphor. It's physics. Your body is electrical. Your nerves are conductors. Your spine is the channel. And arousal? It's the fuel. Most people leak this energy every day. Chasing quick pleasure. Numbing out. Losing their power in moments of unconscious release. But you are learning the sacred pause. The holy containment. The slow, steady build of the inner fire. And here's what happens. Your eyes sharpen. Your voice deepens. Your aura expands. People feel you when you walk in the room. Not because you've touched them, but because you're full of the unspent force of creation. Erotic fasting doesn't make you less alive. It makes you feral with presence. It returns you to your animal power, but filters it through your divine awareness. This is not abstinence. This is mastery. This is conscious sovereignty over the flame that lives inside your loins. A fire most men waste. A fire most women silence. But you are feeding it. Stoking it. Letting it rise. This is how mystics entered altered states without touch. How they wept without being touched. How they entered rapture simply by breathing and remembering who they are. Because once that energy is no longer chasing pleasure, it starts chasing God. Something strange happens when you let yourself feel fully. When you stop performing. When you stop rushing. When you stop trying to impress, dominate, achieve. You start to disappear. Not physically, but psychically. Thought slows. Identity slips. And what remains is not the you've always known. It's something deeper. Older. Infinite. This is the moment of ego death, and it can happen in the throes of deep erotic surrender. Not just when you orgasm, but when you merge. When you are no longer giver or receiver. No longer masculine or feminine. No longer even. You are the breath. You are the heat. You are the trembling silence between moans. You are the infinite pulse that lives in all things. And for a moment, you remember. You remember what it was like to be formless. To be soul before skin. To be cosmos before culture. The ego fears this moment. Because the ego feeds on separation. Titles. Roles. Shame. Control. But sacred pleasure. Real, embodied, conscious pleasure. It annihilates the illusion of control. It drowns your defenses in ecstasy. It seduces your false self into stillness. And when you finally surrender, you die. But this is not a funeral. This is a rebirth. Because from that death of the old self, rises the truth of who you really are. Not a body chasing stimulation, but a soul drinking light through the senses. Not a fractured mind torn by desire, but a flame that has become the fire itself. This is why mystics sought altered states. Not to escape, but to dissolve the tight shell of personality. And feel life directly, without filter. In sacred sex, in orgasmic meditation. In deep energetic states. You are stripped of the masks. You are not good or bad. Not successful or failing. Not beautiful or unworthy. You simply are. And this pure beingness. It's not eroticism for its own sake. It is devotion. It is liberation. You are not here to conquer pleasure. You are here to dissolve in it. To be unmade and remade in its holy fire. That's why after sacred union, whether alone or with another, you sometimes cry, or laugh, or sit in silence for hours. Because you have touched the eternal. You have remembered what the world made you forget. You are not your name. You are not your past. You are not your shame. You are the light behind the eyes. The stillness beneath the ache. The soul that has never stopped longing to return home. This is why erotic mysticism is not just about pleasure. It is about annihilation, the destruction of illusion, the burning of false self, the resurrection of the divine within. And once you've died this kind of death, no pleasure ever feels empty again. No touch feels casual. No breath feels meaningless. Because you have seen, you have felt the truth, that what we call lust is the divine's secret doorway. And sacred pleasure, when fully surrendered to, doesn't feed the ego. It destroys it. All your life, you were taught to seek love outside of you. In a partner. In validation. In touch. In attention. In the thrill of being wanted. But what if the one you've been chasing has always lived inside your chest? What if the deepest hunger wasn't for another's body, but for your own presence? You've longed to be ravished, adored, seen. You've begged someone to finally understand the ache in your belly, the tremble in your breath, the wild fire behind your eyes. But no one could fully meet it, because they were only mirrors, reflections of a deeper lover, the one you forgot. The divine lover is not a fantasy. It is your inner beloved, the part of your soul that holds you through the storm, touches you without shame, looks at you without judgment, and whispers, "You were never too much. You were always holy." This is what the mystics knew, that the true sacred union is not between man and woman, or even soul and soul, but between you and the God within. This is why you must stop waiting, stop chasing, stop begging others to make you feel whole. You must become the one who sees yourself naked, body, shadow, soul, and says, "Yes, even this is divine." You must become the one who touches your own skin, like it's the cloak of a goddess, who breathes into your belly, like it's a temple, who moans in the dark, not because you're lonely, but because the universe lives inside you. This is not about isolation. It's about integration. Because once you reclaim the inner beloved, you stop seeking lovers to complete you. You start attracting lovers who reflect your sacred fire. The love you make with others becomes an extension, not a replacement, of the love you've already made within, but to awaken this divine lover inside. You must court yourself. You must seduce yourself. Not in egoic fantasy, but in deep reverence. Take yourself on rituals. Bathe like you're baptizing the divine. Touch yourself like you're sculpting God from clay. Write to yourself. Cry with yourself. Breathe with yourself until your own silence feels like home. And then, when you do meet another, it won't be from hunger. It will be from overflow. You'll no longer say, "Please love me." You'll say, "I already am love. Let's meet there." Because you're no longer seeking the flame. You are the flame. You'll no longer worship someone else's attention. You'll worship the moment you and another both recognize that you are reflections of the same fire, the same erotic pulse, the same divine ache that animates the stars. The truth is, the lover you've been craving is the part of you that knows how to hold paradox. The beast and the angel, the sinner and the saint, the body and the soul. And when you reclaim that part, you are never alone again, because your solitude becomes sacred. Your breath becomes a sacrament. Your longing becomes a liturgy. And every time you touch yourself with presence, or cry into the stillness with no one watching, or moan the name of a God you cannot see, you are not seeking. You are remembering. Remembering the truth that erotic mysticism whispers in your blood. You are the lover. You are the beloved. And you are the space where they finally meet. Lust brought you here, not because it is base, but because it is truthful. Desire doesn't lie. It is the language of the soul. When every other voice has been drowned out by culture, dogma, and fear, you thought lust was a curse. You were told it was temptation. But now you know it was the compass. It pointed you to the places inside that still needed healing. It revealed your hunger for wholeness. It cracked open the illusion that the sacred and the sensual must be split. You once chased pleasure to escape yourself. Now you feel pleasure to enter yourself more deeply, to return home, to remember your light. But now comes the most important part. integration. It is one thing to touch the divine in moments of rapture, to dissolve in the fire of altered states, to meet God in the trembling of your breath. But it is another thing entirely to walk with that light in the ordinary world, to hold that flame in your heart, while paying bills, while washing dishes, while holding a friend's grief, while resisting the pull of old addictions, while staying conscious when it would be easier to numb again. Mysticism is not escape. It is embodied awakening. And erotic mysticism? It is remembering that your flesh is not in the way of your soul. It is the way. Your lust is not a mistake. It is the friction that reveals your edges, so that you may polish them into mirrors of God. But listen closely. The goal was never lust alone. The goal was never orgasm, or fantasy, or indulgence. The goal was always union. And the highest form of union is love. Not sentimental love. Not romantic illusion. Not attachment disguised as devotion. But love as presence. Love as reverence. Love as the divine recognition that every soul is a spark of the infinite. And every body is a temple aching to be seen. When lust becomes love, it no longer needs to consume. It seeks to illuminate. You stop needing to take. You begin to give. You become the current, not the seeker. Because the mystic knows. Lust that is purified through fire becomes compassion, becomes wisdom, becomes radiance. You no longer burn from hunger. You burn with light. And here you begin to live differently. You walk into rooms with the grace of someone who has touched the eternal. You speak with the calm of someone who has faced their shadows and survived. You touch others not to fill a void, but to awaken something sleeping in them. Your sexuality is no longer a secret shame. It is a sacred force. A medicine. A light too holy to waste. You are not afraid of your fire, because you know where it comes from, and you know where it leads. And now, when you touch yourself, you touch God. When you weep in silence, you are heard by something vaster than thought. When you open your heart to another, fully, vulnerably, without masks, it is not lust. It is not romance. It is worship. You are no longer seeking union. You are the union. The temple and the flame. The shadow and the light. The ache and the answer. The body and the beloved. Finally home. So now walk. Not as the one who is lost in longing, but as the one who has become longing itself. Let your eyes carry the weight of all that you've remembered. Let your voice hum with the sound of divinity rediscovered. Let your desire, yes, even now, lead you ever inward, to the sacred center where love, lust, and light are no longer separate. They are you. They have always been you. They were never outside of you. You are the mystic. You are the fire. You are the gateway. And now, you are awake. If this spoke to you, if something stirred within your body, your breath, your soul, then you are not alone. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are awakening. Awakening to the sacred fire inside you. Awakening to the truth that you were never meant to numb, or chase, or hide. You were meant to remember. To walk this earth with the gravity of a soul who has touched the divine, and returned with eyes full of flame. So don't run from your desire. Don't silence your ache. Honor it. Breathe into it. Let it lead you home. And if this journey has awakened something in you, a memory, a longing, a spark, then stay with me. Subscribe. Return to this sacred space whenever the world becomes too loud. Because here, you are not judged. You are not shamed. Here, your lust is sacred. Your body is holy. And your soul? Your soul is on fire with light. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, burn beautifully, and walk as the sacred flame you are.